right, I'm back with a video I did not think I would make today. I was probably just going to skip a video to play Alan Wake 2, but there is some very bad, very disconcerting news out of Bungie today. It has not been publicly announced, but a number of team members have announced it. There have been some amount of layoffs at Bungie, and we don't know how many yet, but we do know that it's a big deal because it's some of the ones we know about, at least, are some of the most forward-facing people at the company. That would be Liana from Comms, the community manager, and Sam, another community manager, and Griffin, the social media lead, who's been there for 5 years, and some other people. I still do not know the full scope of this. There's a lot of anger involved, not necessarily from those people directly, but DMG was posting about how this is, poor management or echoes of management failure from the past, so it might be something that he's experienced before. And it's, in one sense, it's another bad day of layoffs in the industry. We have seen many, many layoffs across many, many companies, but the Bungie case obviously is more specific to us all in our community here, but also it's very odd and bad given the Sony acquisition. The idea was that Bungie got all this money, sold for $3.7 billion, got $1.2 billion for employee retention, and now things are sliding and not going great, and they are laying off employees, and I would argue extremely important employees. You can't have a live service game where you need to be constantly communicating with players and lay off your social and comms teams. Nope, that's bad. That's a terrible idea. I saw someone saying how it's like a city laying off its fire department. Like, you can't really do that. And I know maybe not everybody from these teams is gone, but like, that's a very, very bad place to cut in this specific instance. I'm told this is more on the publishing side generally than the dev side. There was something about, I saw at least one engineer that said they've been let go, but again, we don't know the full scale. This is a 1,000 employee company, but it's more about like how high profile these cuts were, given that some of these people are, pretty big fixtures in the public facing section of the company. But just before I started recording this, there's another part to this where Bungie in general seems to be floundering, like more than usual, like more than just, they laid off some people. It seems to run deeper than that. Jason Schreier of Bloomberg, who has all the best inside sources, says that people have told him that the Final Shape expansion is delayed from February 2024 to June 2024. So that would be a 4-month delay. It would also put it outside of Sony's fiscal window. It would also totally screw up the new episodic model that was supposed to start after the Final Shape, so that would get pushed back by a good amount. And then the other part of this is that Marathon would not hit until 2025. I didn't know if there was for sure a 2024 window on that, but the main point is that there seems to be a gulf here between Destiny continuing on as a live service and then Bungie putting a lot of stock in Marathon coming and being a huge new game. And I think a good chunk of this we can trace to Lightfall, which I think most of us agree was a terrible expansion in many ways, story-wise, mostly environment-wise. Strand was good. It was fun, not good to integrate in the campaign, but in general, Lightfall was a very poorly received expansion, and even if the seasons have been better after that, it does feel like Destiny has been struggling on the whole. It has a ton of competition. It is, maybe not in the PvE live service space, but in general, it has a ton of competition, especially in 2023 when there are just dozens and dozens of must-play, crazy good games out. I am sure that's not helping at all. For me personally, this is the least I've ever played Destiny in a given year. Not because I'm especially upset with Destiny. It's just I have way too many other things to play, and I doubt I'm alone in that. So I believe playtime is dropping. I feel like I almost wrote this article a few times, but I'm like, my question was is Bungie hard up for cash? Are they struggling for revenue? Because all of the decisions they've made lately, upping prices, doing things like the Dungeon Pass, event passes, putting shader bundles behind $10 walls, like monetizing transmog. Like this, I've said before, this is the most monetized game in terms of all the different ways they monetize things, compared to pretty much any other game in the market. Like, yeah, other games are more predatory. You have your gacha gambling games, and they don't do that. But in terms of like the sheer scale of all the things they monetize and how much monetized content they put out in a given season, it's crazy. And I'm like, I was genuinely wondering, I'm like, are they having like some level of financial development issues? Because I don't know why they'd be doing this, like trying to squeeze even more money out of people when everyone's hoping they'd like revert some of these changes. And sure enough, here we are. So I don't know. It's upsetting for me to see this because I know a lot of these people, and that doesn't often happen when I hear about video game layoffs. And like, it's really fucked up, and I don't like to see it. I really, especially, don't like to see assholes celebrating because they don't like Destiny or don't like a specific person. That sucks, and you should block them on site. It does not seem like Bungie's in a great place right now. This does not reflect well on Sony, where this was not really the case, to this extent before Sony bought Bungie. And the idea was for Sony to buy Bungie. Destiny was supposed to thrive. They were supposed to make Marathon and other games. And Sony has this big live service push planned, and Bungie was supposed to advise on that. And instead, what's happening? Destiny's struggling. Marathon is very far away and pushed back. And there's really no guarantee that it's going to be some sort of breakout hit. Again, given how crowded the market is, and what kind of market there will remain for an extraction shooter that isn't Tarkov or Dr. Disrespect's Dead Drop. So that's not a guarantee. And then Sony's own live service ambitions have been a little questionable. We haven't heard anything official, but like Jim Ryan just left Sony. Connie Booth, a longtime publishing person, was fired allegedly, and Sony itself seems like it's been going through a shakeup. And then one of the reports is that maybe they're not going as hard on the live service stuff after all. Like they keep, they find infinite success with all their single player games, but I think they're worried about the high budgets of those and making up those budgets with sales. So they were going to do, okay, well, it's time to do live service. But guess what? Doing live service is really hard, especially when you have a bunch of teams that are almost entirely focused on single player games and have been for a decade or two. So the point was, Bungie was supposed to come in and consult these teams, but like the only results we've really heard of that is something like Bungie looked over the Last of Us factions and we're like, nope, that's not really good enough at this point. And then now the Last of Us factions may not even come out. It's been delayed. The team has been, downsized. Like, so who knows if that's even happening? There's supposed to be like a Horizon, Fortnite-ish game coming, and like the report is that Sony may be like scaling back on this a bit. And the Bungie Sony deal was always very weird because they paid all this money for Bungie, but all of Bungie's games are remaining multi-platform. Destiny, Marathon will be multi-platform. And I just don't know if Sony knows why they bought Bungie. Like, not that, for $3.6 billion compared to, larger purchases, they weren't like a good deal necessarily. It's just, I think Sony had this vision of, okay, we're going to keep all of our nice single player games and do this pivot to all these successful live service games where, Destiny has been a successful live service game. It is also getting old. It is also getting increasingly hard to manage. It is getting increasingly hard to pull revenue from, obviously. And Bungie's expected to turn all these other single player devs into live service phenoms. Boy, that's a lot harder than it sounds. And I bet that is what they are learning now. In terms of Bungie, there does seem to be management problems within Bungie. Ever since, it feels like ever since they decided to add another expansion into ahead of the final shape, that's when things sort of got a little wonky. Technically, that was like the first delay of the final shape, where we got a whole other expansion, and that pushed the final shape back a year. And now there's another alleged 4-month delay. As I'm recording this, I kind of doubt Bungie is immediately going to say anything about this. You don't usually immediately post things about this. Jason says, to be clear, Bungie recently told staff that the final shape and Marathon are delayed. It was not made public until this story. So that's the story he wrote. So that's not great. I hadn't heard that behind the scenes yet, but I was, it's not really what I was focused on given the layoffs. So that is not good. If you delay an expansion 4 months, I'm just realizing that makes next season, which was supposed to be 3 months, 7 months. And we know how much a game can suffer and languish when it has to just be dragged on endlessly. Sometimes Bungie has planned for this, where during at least one of the seasons that was extended into 6 months, they did the Bungie 30th anniversary event, which added a dungeon, which added Dares of Eternity, and like that was a good amount of content they built for that. So kind of refreshed in the middle. If this is happening, this is a really last minute delay here for the season start, because next season starts in a month, and I don't think you can just be like, well, we're going to develop content for 3 months from now, like starting now, unless this was known a long time ago. So next season is about to be like really fucked. And I don't know how that's going to pan out, in addition to pushing all the episodes back. Like, it's not like Destiny expansions have never been delayed, but that's a really long delay, and it's also within this context of like, it's not, we need a little more time to polish. It's like Bungie is going through some serious issues right now. I don't have a magic wand of how to fix all this stuff. You know, everyone has their own suggestions of how to fix Destiny. I have always been concerned about the idea that they are going to rely on Destiny to print money forever to fund other multiplayer projects outside of the Destiny universe, like now Marathon and this Gummy Bears side game they're making. Like, that's, I don't know, it's like Fall Guys or something. I don't know. That always seemed like a risk to me, because I do wonder, you know, Destiny 2 is a old game at this point, and you would imagine revenue is going to keep going down over time, given its age and just given natural fall off, because that's what happens. So without any sort of plan for like a huge refresh of Destiny, which has never been talked about, they just talked about making more Destiny 2 content. I don't know how long Destiny is supposed to go on printing money, you know, endlessly to fund this other stuff, unless Sony's just injecting them with cash, which I feel like they probably should be to a certain extent. And but that was even before we had like very obviously big mistakes like Lightfall. So you can kind of see how this all adds up. But what's the end result? Layoffs of people who did not remotely deserve it. And the community is going to be in an even worse state if we're about to run into a 7-month season and a delayed expansion, which may have its own problems, given what we saw with Lightfall, pushback episodes, and then no clear future for what's supposed to be coming next after Destiny 2. And then Marathon being a complete unknown and unlikely to have even that much carryover between the Destiny audience and the Marathon audience, because it's a totally different type of game devoid of, you know, PvE almost entirely. And that's, you know, what a lot of people love about Destiny. I don't know. It's not good. It's not good. And this is a tough morning for Bungie. The community is like, what is going on? And they're like running around with their hair on fire. I'm recording this like, I don't know, an hour after the layoffs were announced, and like 10 minutes after Jason announced the delay. So there's probably going to be more to come here. I wrote an emergency article about this. I'm literally just, I'm like going through Twitter to see if there's any updates as we speak. Yeah. In February, the Destiny show with an update. The account I meme on a lot, but this is useful. Actually, in February 22, Bungie leadership assured the Sony deal will not result in layoffs or restructuring. Last month, Bungie began waves of layoff amidst a major expansion on the horizon and multiple titles in development. Yeah, they had done some layoffs before this, but yeah, they're going back on essentially what they said a year ago. Like, that's not good. So I think Bungie management is definitely at fault here. I don't know what Sony's doing these days. Like, Lord help them. Like, thank God Insomniac, you know, has its act together and made Spider-Man 2, but Sony itself is really all over the place. You know, they really went nuts during the whole Microsoft thing. Like, I don't know. They're not functioning correctly either, I would say. So yeah, I think I'll wait to say even more about this until we get more details, but this is not good. This has been a really tough afternoon, morning here, and my heart does go out to all those affected. Not just people I know, people I don't know. I don't know how many people this affected, but wild to me you would cut your social and comms teams in a situation like this, in a situation where players like are going to need more communication than ever about like the plans and what's going on and like all of this stuff. Insane. Okay. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll talk more about this tomorrow, I'm sure. So take care.